I'm so glad you're here to ease back, to rest, and to listen. Before we get started, I want to share this with you. Rest is many things. Rest is a portal. Rest is a bridge from where you are to where you want to be. Rest is fuel. Rest is a soft place to land. And most of all, rest is sacred. Rest is refuge. Rest is remembrance. Rest is a revelation. You are sacred. Your rest is sacred. And if you want to infuse more of the sacredness of rest into your day to day life, I have something for you. Check out my latest book, Rest is Sacred, at www.restisacred.com. Okay, enjoy your listen. Welcome to Leaders Devoted to Rest, where we explore how rest is a sacred practice that awakens both possibility and power within you. I'm your guide, Octavia, Faith, and Raheem. In each episode, I chat with a leader whose life has been positively transformed through their devotion to rest. Now, you know we aren't just going to sit up here and talk about rest. We are going to actually lay down. Each episode ends with a rest practice for you to try at home. Rest is fuel, and you are in the right place to fuel up. So grab your favorite pillow, blanket, cozy socks, and journal, and ease on back as we begin another restorative episode. Today, I am chatting and resting with Dr. Tej Khalsa, who is a consultant to the World Health Organization's Department of Noncommunicable Diseases and Mental Health, and the founder and medical director of the GMI Mind Body Medicine Clinic. She is the recipient of two funding awards from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control for her work in patient education. In 2020, she made the decision to leave corporate style medicine and advance mind body medicine as a publicly funded and justice driven clinical service. This has become her chief devotion. The clinic serves patients in the US and Canada. In this episode, Tej and I deeply explore how rest is heart medicine that impacts us on a spiritual, energetic, physical, emotional, and collective level. Thank you so much for being here. It's delightful to have you. Thank you for saying yes to being in conversation this way. And I would like to start by stopping. How
Mhm.
about you?
I love that.
Oh, okay. So your eyes can be open, your eyes can be closed. I think of this just as I'm tuning in, and it feels important to say that when I start by stopping with folks, it is also a way to quietly, though deeply and loudly say, you are not alone. We are not alone. So we'll just pause here and notice our individual body and then turn awareness to the breath that I am breathing and you are breathing. And we'll share together 3 inhales and 3 exhales. And then let the next inhalation be fuller and deeper without forcing it to be. Consider what it might mean to allow it to be fuller and deeper, and then exhale out with a sigh. So, thank you again for being here. When you're ready, if your eyes are closed, you can open them. I always like to notice the the power of the pause and what can shift just in a moment of pausing in a day or a moment. And could you start us off by telling us who you are and where you are arriving from?
Sure. So my full name is Dr. Tejinder Kaur Khalsa. Please call me Tej, as you do, Octavia, and I'm arriving from the middle of my clinic day.
That is so real. Thank you for being here. I call these restorative conversations, and to restore is I think about something maybe jiggled out of place and you restore it, something moves back into place. And so I hope our time together is restorative. So we rest together, and that is the work we do with each other. I'm curious, what has rest awakened within you? And the
Mm,
context can be just this moment. The context can be this day, it can be the week. I also recognize that if it's awakened, it's awake, right? So the
mhm.
context doesn't even matter, but what has rest awakened within you?
Yeah, so many things, but I think uniquely so, it's awakened a connection to my own power, embodied power, and a deep awareness of self and how I move through the world and where I am disconnected from my power or giving it away. And it's so beautiful because rest, it's not just being aware of the disconnect, it's the awareness that comes because part of you has already returned home. And so, um, even to start by stopping now is so beautiful because I felt like we could be sitting in the same circle, Octavia. Just that breath practice every time with you. It's just so beautiful. That connection, even as we're also in our each of our own days going through our own things. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you want me to say more about that because I can't.
You know, something that I know about you is that you once told me that you prescribe rest.
Mm.
Could you say more about that?
Yes. Yes. Oh my god, yes. I just spoke I saw a few folks this morning before this meeting and, so and I talked about it, with several patients, and, Octavia, as if so I'm a general internist, adult medicine over the age of 18. I finished my training, my first job was at Mayo Clinic leading mind-body medicine, usually looking at kind of the intersection of stress with, like, symptoms, but usually a lot of complex chronic disease. But the heart is not only at the heart of my work, it's also in my line of work. It's sort of the just to say it plainly, it's like the leading driver of mortality, of premature death for us in the United States, but in the world. And rest in my practice, I talk about in those terms, Octavia, just to make this so real and relatable, also as a physician to kind of take it out of the realm of something very subtle that sometimes is hard to connect to if you haven't ever had that opportunity or the space to even just relax into your own subtlety. So, anyways, I start with something a little concrete and I talk about the physical heart. And Octavia, like in medical school, they teach it to us as this pump, that never stops working. And it
Mm.
contracts and it contracts. And it's this, to me, it's this very stereotyped metaphor of the way we view the human body, particularly some folks over others, but also our view of work. that, it's just this constant contraction and service to something greater, pumping oxygenated blood to the head, pumping oxygenated blood to the body. And, even when the heart does that, the pressure that's generated in that contraction even alters its ability to oxygenate and feed its own self. The coronary arteries, the blood vessels that feed the heart muscle themselves have to take a hit so in service of the whole. So there's just sort of this idea almost in a way, I mean, metaphorically, of just serving something else at the cost of yourself. And it's all about contraction. It's all about pushing. It's all about a power that comes through that kind of a feeling. Um, and rest to me, and how I talk about it as a physician to my patients now, is I tell them, since studying with you and the things that have happened in my life, I've actually gone back to the heart and I've started to understand it in a whole new way, which is actually in its rest, and how actually everything it does, Octavia, begins from rest. And the day the heart begins to fail in medicine, like what we call heart failure, Octavia, it starts the day the heart fails to remember to rest and fails how to remember, fails to remember how to relax. Because so it's called diastole, and that's the part where the heart releases its contraction, and in that release and resting, it expands. And all the, deoxygenated blood coming back to the body, that's gonna, from the body to the heart, that's gonna send to the lungs, or if it's oxygenated blood coming back from the lungs to the heart again, that's gonna send out to the rest of the whole again. It's in that expansion that the filling happens, and then the contraction comes after that. So not, contraction and pumping isn't possible without rest. That's where the expansion and the filling comes. And knowing in medicine that we have a lot of ways of manipulating, Octavia, the contraction. Like we have drugs, we have vasopressors. There's things we can do in an ICU, or even the pills folks can take at home to just sort of amplify the pump and the
Mm.
contraction. But we do not have good drugs. We do not have good interventions to allow that relaxation and release and the expansion. It's so much more sophisticated. Um, so the science kind of ignores it. It's a deficit, and our society kind of ignores it in the way we even see ourselves, our bodies, and our relationship to work. Like it can be born out of this place of release, expansion, and filling. And so that's how I talk about rest to my patient. And they get it, Octavia. Then I can like lead them to your books, to breath work and things we can do together.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, the next thing I'll talk about after that kind of metaphor, and I tell them, meditate with this. We're right now we're recording, and we're moving into winter and holiday season, so it's the perfect time to rest and remember some of these things and to awaken that part of us again. They had it as babies, so I tell them it's there,
Mm.
it's there. The other thing I'll talk to them about is where can you give it a rest? Sometimes it's hard to go straight from this sort of basal level of sympathetic nervous system activity of just living in this heightened state. It's really jarring to try to force the body to drop down into rest deeply. We can't do that. Um, so if we think of it sort of like a feather dropping to the ground, like sort of how I sort of teach it to my patients, I say, maybe even if you don't know what that even feels like to rest, like you've forgotten, you will remember it's there. It's there. Everything we feel, everything we experience in life, Octavia, I teach them, has a home in the brain. So it's there. It's just waiting. They had it when they were babies. It will come back. But my next step that I teach, and the rest I learned from you, but like I say, where can you give it a rest when we're living up here, to sort of start to relax and release just a little bit of that by the things we don't have to do, where we can give it a rest and put that down. That's sort of the next step in the process that I teach. Um, yeah.
Mm. That was so beautiful
Mm.
and clear, and I know very useful. to me, so I know it's gonna be useful to anyone who hears it, this question of where can you give it a rest?
Mm.
Like that it is an important word. It leads me to the question of what are you devoted to doing and not doing in this lifetime, which is like I see and feel it as another way of saying, what are you devoted to? Where are you devoted to letting it rest? Like, what
Mm.
are you resting? So you can answer, what are you devoted to doing? You can also answer, what are you devoted to not doing, or both.
Yeah. Um, so forgive me, I'm gonna change the question to, like, what am I devoted to being and not being? Because
Yeah,
that's
that's
where
right.
the doing comes from.
That's right.
And forgive me. So and then from that, I'll say, like, I am devoted to being whole and kind and loving. And I know that can sound really vague or abstract or flighty, like when folks talk about love and light, and it's sort of up here, but I mean it in a really real way, which is that I can tell you that I'm also devoted to not being um, violent in my thinking, not cultivating hatred, not living in my relationship with myself and others in sort of an inferiority superiority complex and that kind of psychological warfare. So I hope that can kind of ground that idea of love, that it's like it's one rooted in truth and authenticity, and rest allows you to feel that. There's a lot of things that can look good on paper, like, oh, I work at the number one country in the world or something. But then when you rest with what that feels like and you put your, I remember Octavia, like after I studied with you, I started to go to work and put my hand on the clinic door. And on the surface, I looked the same walking in and out of the building. I didn't miss a beat, but I started to ask myself that question that Dr. Gail Parker has in her book, Restorative Yoga for Ethnic and Race-Based Stress and Trauma. This is after 2020. I started to ask myself that question from the I think it's Northern Cameroonian tribe, indigenous tribe that says, are you in your skin? Is your soul in your body? And every day, as my fingers would grab that handle and I'd be moving through, the answer was no. Um, and so it was it's why rest, I think, is so powerful because that was sort of the beginning of reclaiming what does real authentic power look like rather than being in a place because it looks good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think when we really take this back, then, like, it really starts to just unravel a lot of things, not just for how we see ourselves, but just the way we're conditioned to sort of move through the world, and it's gonna be a lifelong thing for me. Um, but again, because you sometimes tell me, Octavia, I should kinda go we can go out here in our kinda liberated like, let's bring it back to that fractal, and one of the things I was gonna share with you on just even a practical level is, like, it means, like, when I think about my work or meditate on work, I used to develop sovereignty in these spaces that didn't serve me, like, how do you walk into a building where you can't even feel your own body? I had to sort of rest with that, because I had a mortgage to pay. I still have to go into work on Monday. Um, and by the way, like, these weren't sort of imaginary things, like, when we are feeling what we're feeling, it's showing up for a reason. And there were other things that had happened, very explicit things that were really inappropriate. But in any case, um, where was I going with this? Um, in resting with what to do and how do you navigate going into a place when you have a mortgage and you have kids and school fees and things. I had to start that process of resting, giving it a rest.
Mm.
This isn't all what it seems. So what is? What is true? What is truth? And that's what doing is in this lifetime is it's in service to truth and love, and I feel that here. And it's a portal to everything I feel from you or anyone else in my life. My children, everything is here. And from that, Octavia, I remember having to consult myself when I realized I was in a really not good situation. And it actually came years beforehand, like my second day of work in an orientation with an administrator, something that was said to me in a boardroom, which was so shocking and disrespectful. And I went home with my head. So I'll just tell you the story. They said to me, "We're gonna work you so hard. We're gonna get everything we can out of you. I heard you're a young mother with a young child. I don't know how you can do it." Um, it was just me and this person in the boardroom, and I remember that cognitive dissonance. When those things happen, like racism, sexism, it just sort of comes out of left field. You're shocked. I'm freezing. And I just laughed because I didn't know what else to do, but I went home and I put my head in my hands thinking, "Oh my god, I'm in the middle of the Midwest. I have a mortgage. There's not a soul of family around me. What am I gonna do? How do I go back to work on Monday morning?" Knowing I'm walking to this place where they're not it's not the double speak that we say one thing, but we do another. They've just told me how they see me. How do you walk into a place like that and feel sovereign? So I had to go and I had to like a head in my hands. I actually Octavia, I rested there. And I remember going back into one of my own consult rooms at that same place where folks go and knock on the door and come in to see Dr. Khalsa. Only this time Tej knocks on the door and she goes and sits down with Dr. Khalsa and says, "This is what's happened. How do I go back to work? I have a mortgage." Um, and I remember Dr. Khalsa listening to me, this person, and she looks me right in the eyes and she says, and this is not anything I could find anywhere, right? On the internet or wellness blog or nothing. It's only what we get out of rest in our own practice. She said to me, "You no longer work for, that place. It doesn't matter if their name is on your paycheck or on your badge. Who do you work for? Who do you truly work for from your first breath to your last? That
Mm.
is your employer. And who do you serve from your first breath to your last? That's who you work for, not the patients, the clients who come in or this particular brand, but who do you truly work for?" And then finally, like a question I added on to that was like, who am I? And I in that at that time, Octavia, I remember thinking oneness. I work for oneness. That's my employer from my first breath to my last. Who do I serve? I'm a doctor, so I think in these terms. So who do I serve? I serve my human family, and who am I? I'm kindness, and that means being kind to myself. And part of the work equation, it can't work without being kind to myself. But I go back to that question, those three questions. Now they allowed me to walk back into the same place with my head held up high, but it gave me a pathway out, Octavia. And rest did too, right? It was part of it, and I'm still on the journey of, like, what am I doing, what am I not doing? And so I go back to those questions too, Octavia, and they've changed. Now when I'm going back to that love thing, how it can feel just really out here when I ask myself, "Who do I work for?" The answer is love. Like, that's my boss. Who do I serve? Love, which is, like, a big deal, Octavia, because serving your human family, our human family is dysfunctional, and sometimes as
Mm.
a physician, I've been on the receiving end of that, me being at the back end of the room thinking, "How do I get out of this room?" They're blocking the door.
Mm.
So knowing I serve love changes things for me in terms of who I'm willing to engage with and, the terms of engagement. And when I sometimes have to say, "I wish you well, goodbye." And,
Mhm.
but also, I know I also am love, and I have felt that in rest, that truth. And I'm learning to trust that enough that I can make changes with the way I work. So I don't feed that kind of inferiority, superiority thing. I don't do things as much for show anymore. Um, I like to say all came these revelations through rest, but sometimes, Octavia, like, I know you have a prayer of like, let the lessons be gentle, but sometimes the lessons have to be a little rough. Like 2020, I needed the wake up of
Mm.
George Floyd was murdered an hour from my home. Um, I needed no, I would never wish for anything like that, but catastrophe sometimes just makes you snap out of it. And so that inferiority superiority thing of like, I'm plugging into something that is sort of, I know doesn't serve me. I know it's sort of an illusion, but it's the reality of the way the world works. When things like that happen, it forces your nervous system to confront that I can no longer live split like this. I have to live the truth. That is the only way to a liberated life. So there was sort of sometimes there's I hope life and the path forward can be gentle for my patients and for myself, for every human being. But sometimes I've noticed in life when just to really cling, and need to big things have to happen to really just finally let go and release. But
Mm,
my practice, I lean on that so I don't have to get to that point anymore. And I'm trusting enough that it doesn't have to take big things like that.
mm.
I hope
Thank
that answered your question. No,
Well,
not all.
the question I started with was, "What are you committed to doing and not doing?" And you offered this really powerful and important reframe of being and not being.
Mm,
And what I really, hear in what you said is rest awakens in such a way where it becomes less and less possible to do the thing that might look good but doesn't feel good. And I'm not talking about feeling like just, but just that it's not good with your soul. Like, like there can be things that we're doing, it looks good and it is unwell with our soul. So that's what I mean when I say feeling. I'm not talking, I think feelings are really important and powerful. I also don't think it's the right word. It's like a stand-in word for now. So what I heard you say is that rest awakens you to has awakened you to who you serve and who you work for and on behalf of. And that also changes your relationship to work. You don't work for the person who said, "I'm going to squeeze everything out of you," and thought that that was appropriate to say to a human being. You work not for love, but on behalf of it. Um, and you're also waking up the more you rest to when there's a dissonance between your experience. There's a disconnect or dissonance between mind, body, heart, and soul. That's what I
mhm,
heard you say.
mhm,
And so I it's important to me that we don't just, talk about rest when we could be resting
mhm,
or pausing, right? Because the pause is a place of immense power, right? And so before we shift to a short rest practice, is there anything else you want to share or lift up or say about what rest has made possible in your leadership, in your lineage, your legacy, or in how you are moving through the world and creating in the world?
mm. I have to go back to power, and I'll say authentic power. Um, you know, um, we're now doing some sort of planning for our lineage, estate planning. And I just want to go back to just really making this real, taking this and making it real. So, like, Octavia, my clinic, if I push myself and work too much, I might double my revenue in a day, but I numb out. And the core of the clinic, because I'm a mind body medicine specialist essentially. I function as a consultant, and I have to be able to meet each of my patients here first before we meet here. I have to be able to feel that. Again, feeling being a standing inward, and with that, the intention I have for them that comes out of love. that authenticity guides the care and makes sure give them the kind of care I'd want my own mother, brother, sister, father to have. Um, and now we're sort of moving into this place where, it's a startup is 2 years old, but we're already moving into a place where we're sort of thinking about how we're going to pass on what we're creating. My husband and I work the clinic together, and we're thinking about what we're going to be preserving for our kids and grandkids, because now we can think in those terms. It wasn't really possible before. Um, and money, it's just money ain't a thing. It's like the song, I love the song. But it's like, that it means so many things all at once, and it really does go back to love. We have to have it, but it's like, so that's sort of like something I'm gonna be resting with now, to be honest, when we go into our practice. I wanna rest my heart today, but I'm also kind of resting with, like, the what am I here to do and what am I here not to do? What am I here to pass on to my lineage? How do you pass on love? Like when you're building a trust
Mm.
for your lineage, how you can impart that, up, lift that up. But I feel like those kinds of that integration only happens through rest. Making it real only happens through rest. So I just want to
Mm.
share that. Um, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tej. So I heard you say that the part most in need of rest is the heart space.
Mm,
Is that, did I mishear that or is that right?
mhm,
Okay. And my invitation for you for the next 3 to 5 minutes is you can stay on camera, you can go off camera, whatever will be most of service for you. Thank you so much for showing up and sharing. And so, what we'll do, we'll rest for some time and then you'll have an option to come back. And I want to know where we can find you and learn more about your practice and your offerings.
mhm.
Okay. So, is it your heart?
Oh, my heart feels so good after saying everything. I thought it was gonna be my heart. Uh, yeah, it's actually my back, to be honest.
Ooh, so are you gonna stay sitting upright, or are you gonna lay down, or are you gonna I see that wall behind you, are you I know sometimes you like to sit. I love seeing you on camera. Sometimes you sit with your back against the wall and just push your head in. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, for those who may be listening later, practicing this with us, I just wanna say, Octavia, like, it's okay to have these different ways of resting, like
that's
you
right.
said, rest back against the wall. Sometimes, Octavia, I can't even do that. I have to be outside just moving slowly, like
Yes.
slowly walking, just to come down a little bit where I could even then rest my back against the wall. So I'm gonna rest my back against the wall. Maybe
Okay.
keep the camera on to normalize that for folks like me. Because there is, like, a lot of, like, Octavia, there's a lot of this, like, "I think I have ADHD." Whether folks do or not, the reality is they're feeling that, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and rest can meet them wherever they're at.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I have
Okay.
a blanket off camera, folks. Probably see with me with it too.
And something I want to do is, um just invite you to kind of rock from left to right, side to side as we begin. Yeah. And so your eyes can be open, they can be closed. And I'm doing this to honor and acknowledge that you shared with me you're in like smack in the middle of your workday as a consultant and physician. And so and it might be for you just the slightest bit of movement can be helpful. And to check in with the breath as you move. And I said, rock left to right, side to side. It might just be the head that moves, some movement inspired by the rhythm of rocking for another breath or two. And if more than a breath or two is needed of that rocking motion, please take it. Notice the body and the support beneath the body. Can you get 1% more comfortable? And notice where in the body you feel a sense of stability and support, even if it's like a big toe. It could be the smallest place. And then notice one place in the body where you would appreciate more stability and support. And Tej named her back. And we are sitting, or she is sitting with back against the wall. And so, just as I often instruct or offer to be aware of the floor beneath you, supporting you, and give 1% more of your weight to the floor, you can notice the support at your back and lean into that support, even if it's just by 1%. And as simple as it may seem, this is the whole practice for now, to be aware of the support beneath, the support at your back, the space and permission to 1% at a time lean into that support. And then to be aware of the breath, the rise and fall, the ebb and flow. And with each inhale and exhale, to direct the hand, if you will, of the breath to where within the body is most in need of soothing, massaging, holding, supporting. And we'll be here just about 30 more seconds. And so notice breath again and notice the support at your back. Notice the support along the entire backside of the body, whether it's the support at the back, the support beneath you, the support down by the ankles. Invite the breath to deepen, and as it does, can we still soften maybe 1 more %? And then, if you're ready, when you're ready, you just Bring some small movement back in the body. It could be the smallest bit of rocking since that's the way we started. Your eyes can open. Ted, I hope that was of service to you.
Beautiful, Octavia.
Ted, um, thank you so much for being here. If you could share one word, how are you leaving?
Free.
Free.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
thank you. Share with us where we can learn more about. I mean, I'm like, the world needs doctors like you. I'm always so honored to be in this kind of rest, this working relationship around rest with you. So thank you. Where can we find you? Where can we follow you? Where can we learn more from and about you?
Um, so if you want to learn more about my clinic or reach out to me about the clinic, about being seen or collaborating, it's mindbodymedicineclinic.com,
Okay.
mindbodymedicineclinic.com. Um, I have a podcast if folks want to go back and hear that journey of leaving.
Mhm.
It tells the story, and that's the Last Breath podcast.
Mhm.
Calm.
Mhm. And that will all be in the show notes. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for being
you.
here. It's been an honor, Tej.
Thank you, Octavia, and thank you for keeping it to time because now I can jump back into work. I can do it, you know, uh, feeling free. And
Mhm.
to everyone who's listening, I hope there's something, just even one thing that could be of service from anything I shared today. So I wish everyone
Many, 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 many somethings. Thank you so much.
thank you, Octavia. Love you and talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. And you are still here. I hope that means that you enjoy the episode. Before moving on to the next thing, I have an invitation for you. If you can, pause and notice your breath. Notice your inhale and notice your exhale. As you reflect on this episode, what did you hear that was interesting or inspiring? What did you learn? What did this episode wake up within you? What did this episode allow to rest within you? Thank you again so much for being here. You are sacred. Your rest is sacred. And you being here and you staying here affirm that you can be devoted to rest, that you can be a leader and devoted to rest. Until next time.